clean my background up a little bit. This is my makeshift at-home studio. My bookshelf is behind all these wall hangings, so it looks a little bit neater. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's grand. That's what I've done. I've just hung this up over my curtains.
And I find it's better if I turn the top light off and we do like that. How does that look?
Yeah, that's great. That's
and I
better.
go up a bit higher, maybe like this.
You need one of those like passport chairs, you know, the ones where you take a passport and it.
Okay, now I'll put my microphone on too, because I think that works better.
Yeah, great.
Okay, I'm going to put my microphone on, and then I'm going to walk out the room and tell me if you can still hear me, okay?
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me like this?
Yes, I can.
Oh, no, you can't tell really, can you? I'll press the button first.
Okay.
Okay, now it's connected. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
That's better, yeah. I'm going to walk out the room. Tell me if you can still hear me out the room. I'm going to go out the room. And can you still hear me here?
I can still hear you, but I don't know why you're outside.
I'm just checking, because you see, theoretically, you wouldn't be able to hear me on the telephone speaker. I'm checking if the actual speaker on my head is working to transmit rather than coming off my thing. Yeah, good. Okay, I'm coming back in. Because I've been fooled by that before. I thought it was working, and then it was just coming into the telephone.
Oh, I see.
Okay, yes.
Right.
All right, so I'm here for you, girlfriend. How are you going?
Excellent, best friend. I'm good. How are you?
Yes. I'm very good, thank you, I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think that's how we all are. We're like, yeah, we're fine. Yeah. I think.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Yeah. So have you been managing? Have you been extra busy because you're in lockdown like everyone else?
Yes, extra busy.
Weird, right?
Ridiculous. So, yeah, you'd think you'd have more time, and I feel like I've got less. And I'm also trying to do bloody high school assignments every day. So, you know, I'm in high school. Fuck, man, it's trying to. The school teachers have abandoned my kids.
Well, I know. Selfish. Blaming it on a pandemic.
Yes.
Lazy, if anything. You know what I mean, Simon?
It is.
As if you haven't got enough by being ultra spiritual. Now you've got to do your kids' homework for them.
Exactly. And I've got to do also the cooking and the cleaning and too much.
Wow, a man of many talents.
Not very talented at all. That's the problem.
Oh, bless you. More than talented. Well, it's nice to see you again. It's
very nice to see you too. The Almond Base Festival seemed to go really well, and I think I got nice feedback myself. Did you get good feedback also?
Loads, so much so, Simon, that I'm inviting you to come back again, not only for this, but at the end of May we're doing another one.
Okay, fantastic.
Because I don't see lockdown going anywhere for a little while.
I don't see it going anywhere either. I think we're thinking about, we've cancelled our May retreat, our May teacher training 1 month. And I think my June one in China is going to go any second. And my Thailand one in July looks like it's gone already. I'm not sure about the August one in Spain, but that doesn't look promising. And then now they're telling us that the one in Bali in September is going to go too. And in the newspaper today, they're saying lockdown might go till 2022.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Some people, yeah. They're trying to freak people out. They're trying to get people to get desperate for all the things that they're trying to impose on us, like vaccination, 5G, and fucking everything, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Oh dear God. And products. They're just like, it's a great time to be selling stuff online, isn't it, in lockdown?
Yes.
Commodity central.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Right. Well, I'm happy with it just rolling like a chat, by the way, because this is how I wanted everything to be. Is just.
Okay. Are you recording already?
Yeah, but I can cut any bits out.
Maybe we should start officially then.
Okay. So let's start officially. Thanks, Simon, for coming.
I mean, but before you start officially, I mean, how dodgy is it to talk about lockdown? I mean, you know, if you talk about lockdown and things like, you know,
we don't have to go into it too deeply.
And it's otherwise because there's lots of
have done just lightly saying things.
Yes,
everyone's talking about it anyway. We're allowed to say things.
Okay, we're allowed to say things. I mean, because
you can
I don't
think whatever you want.
Really,
it's our show.
I think
it's the ZenAF show.
Okay. I mean, because other people who say things that are controversial just get banned.
Well, if we get banned, that's even better.
I know, maybe popular. Okay, so I can talk about my doubts about the whole lockdown scenario, maybe a
You
little bit. I
can,
won't overdo it. I
exactly.
don't want to get I don't want to get attacked by a CIA and things.
Well, you know, I think basically what we're going to do is what we're doing, just literally have a little chat and a talk about things and
Yes, yeah,
back and forth
good.
and keep it
All right.
light-hearted. I'm not going to go too deep into anything, but I'm definitely going to be touching upon a few
Okay.
different things for sure.
In that case, officially begin, and I'll set my timer now so that
And I
I know
like
how long
some
we
of the
going
stuff
for.
that
So
we
you
already
like
talked
what?
about. So I like some of the stuff we already talked about, like you doing housework and kids stuff, because it's real. It's what
Yes.
everyone's doing. So
Well, you can ask me again. I'll say those things again.
great.
So how long do we go for? So I keep an eye on the time.
Hour max.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Now, Max, I'll put my timer on now so we can begin when you're ready.
Okay, lush. Thanks. Well, thank you, Simon, for coming back again to the Zen as Fuck show, apparently. So basically, we're just going to have a little chat and a talk about stuff that's happening now in lockdown and what that means for
Great.
both of us.
I am honored to be here on the Zen as Fuck show. That's a really, really lovely name. Thank you
Yeah,
very much for inviting me.
you're
I'm
most
honored.
welcome. Got to do a head walk.
It's lovely to work with you. I've had years. I broke my neck actually in about when I was 21 years old,
Oh,
and it was like seized up for quite a few years. And then I went to India, and in India everything got
yeah.
much better.
Oh, well,
I'm
I'm really
already
glad that that story had a happy ending.
yes.
Great.
5 years in India, 25 trips to India, and every time I go, it gets better.
It's really good, isn't it? You've got a real good
Yeah,
head wobble. Are you basically an Indian national now?
pretty much. I mean, I have got many Indian friends who, I say, when were you born? And they tell me, 1987. I say, I was there before you.
Yeah, defo. Claimed
Yes.
like all Westerners do, just go and claim a bit of land.
Yes, bless us. No, terrible. No, I love India. I did a really nice recording for an Indian summit 2 days ago, and it was just such a privilege, such an honor to be able to be invited to be teaching yoga to Indian people. And it's sad that many of the Indian nationals have become Westerners.
Oh,
It's only happened, I mean, when I first got to India in 1986, Indians were Indians, and they were just getting a glimmer of MTV, and there was one television per neighborhood, perhaps,
yeah.
and they didn't have anything foreign. But of course, now more and more and more and more, especially since the internet, and especially since almost everyone, including the beggars, have iPhones. Now
Yeah,
the West is
seen
completely
that.
infiltrated. And so now you're finding many Indian people with the same problems as Westerners, and that's what I teach around the world: is how do you teach the possibilities of safe, effective, accessible posture movement and breathing in the form of yoga, sometimes in the form of exercise-based physiotherapy other times, but to not just modern bodies from the West, but also the modern derived bodies in the East, like
Yeah.
I teach in India, China, Thailand, Japan, and they're all completely stuffed up by sitting too much on chairs, traveling too
Yeah.
much on buses, trains, and no traditional lifestyle. Hardly any traditional toilets left, even no squat
I know,
toilets.
I've noticed that because that's one thing I really
Mm,
look forward to when I go to Thailand
yes,
and India.
yes,
And lately
a
I've
good
been
squat.
going, yeah, well, you get like
Yeah.
30% more out, apparently.
Yes,
Or some
much
number.
better for your
It's
hips.
more
I'll
power.
buy I'll buy 30%. Yeah. And the more shit I get rid of, the better. I'm full of
Oh,
it.
darling, always better. Let that shit go. Oh dear.
That's good.
So yeah, everything is changing, and even like the use of technology, which is something I wanted to talk to you about, because obviously yoga is like an ancient practice that's spiritual, but now we're all doing it on technology. How do you sort of where do you lie with that in your sort of beliefs and practice and stuff?
Well, I mean, I'm teaching now many classes that are to an audience who I can't see and I
Mm.
don't know. And that's a bit scary sometimes. And, it's okay, I think, to teach one-on-one at a distance. I would still be able to like to smell the person, touch them, really, get to know who they are in a three-dimensional, real tactile sense. But at least one-on-one, I know who I'm dealing with and I can talk to them.
Yeah.
But when I'm teaching a class to, like a Facebook Live class could be to 1 million people, you have no idea who's in the audience.
Yeah.
So then you've got to go, who's my audience? What is the most safest, most effective, yet accessible and effective thing I can, safe. I look for safe, accessible and effective practices. And really, it's very difficult to find them, which are good for everyone.
Mm.
So you have to trust that the people who are observing you listen to their own bodies to a certain extent. So I try and tell them this.
Mm.
But it's very difficult, because if you demonstrate something too difficult and you say this is not for everyone, often there are people who try what's too difficult. And of course, this happens in a normal class, but you can see them and go, no, not you.
Not yet.
But then you're not yet, And then there's also the possibility that if you make it too easy, too simple, it becomes boring for many people. They switch off and you lose them as potential clients or students.
Mm.
But even then, even if you make it ultra easy, even ultra easy for some people is way too hard anyway.
Exactly.
So it's very difficult. You have to trust their ability.
It's true.
Mm.
It's true. And I find that I'm sort of giving about 5 different variations for one thing. I might be overcooking the pudding, if you know what I mean, just by going, well, you could do this, 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 or this, or this. And
Yes.
I'm finding it really hard to try.
Yes, overcooking the pudding. This, or this. Yeah, well, I mean, that's why I actually developed the style that I teach. It's predominantly visually based, and it's also using active movements. So then when I come into positions, if say it's a stationary posture, then all I've got to do is tell everyone, stay in this position, keep your fingers and toes lengthened, but check your fingers can move, keep your neck lengthened, check it's still free, keep your shoulders apart, check the shoulders can still be mobile, lengthen your lower back, check that you can breathe into the abdomen, lengthen the sitting bones, move them apart a little bit, and check your pelvic floor is relaxed and you can move your hips a bit. And I say, basically, stay in the position, but relax everything you don't need. And I specifically make it so the postures I'm giving them will oblige the activation of one muscle group at least. But then all they've got to do is relax everything they don't need. You see, whereas in normal yoga postures and stretch classes and things like this, they often tell you, tighten this muscle, tighten that muscle, now relax this one. And it's just too much for the average person to do. For example, when you tell them to tighten any one muscle, a whole bunch of extra muscles come on as well. So the classic is when you tell people to tighten their anus, everyone does this.
Yeah, it's true. You can see their face.
And they tighten their face. Yes,
and it's like,
you go, wrong mouth, wrong cheeks.
Wrong sphincter, people.
Wrong sphincter, exactly. So this is why I found that if I want to get the best result, which is a consistent result in my audience, then I try and make them do what I'll call obligatory muscle activations, where I put them in a position where they've got no choice but to tighten the muscle I want, and I just encourage them, relax everything you don't need. And I find with a large group, especially a group I can't see, I get a much better result.
Yeah, defo. And in terms of like energy, so when you're, and I think this is what you meant before as well, when you're teaching someone in a room, you can sort of feel their vibe and also the energy exchange of a teacher, and you can sort of hold that energy better, right? Whereas on technology, so we've got electromagnetic stuff going on, traditionally I've always gone, I'm so spiritual, I shouldn't be looking at a screen, and stuff like that.
Turn your phones off, everyone. Now we have to say, turn your phones on.
And now we're all hypocrites. We're like, come on, everybody, screens are great. Join the party.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So spiritual.
That's so funny. Yeah. That's so funny.
True,
used to be phones off, now it's phones on. Yeah.
Yeah. So I found myself just embracing my inner hypocrite. Basically.
Embrace your inner hypocrite. Phones on, everyone. Good.
Phones
like
on,
we'll talk about that, shall we?
Yeah. Yeah. And because you do a lot in China as well, I guess like earthing and grounding, that technique or that practice of literally being on the earth or on something natural. Have you found yourself needing to do that more since, like, I've stepped up a lot more technology stuff? I'm on the computer quite a lot now, so I've felt the need to go and roll around on the grass or whatever. Have you been?
Yes, I do. I'm lucky. I'm living with my family on a lovely 10-acre property near Byron Bay, which, for those who don't know, is the easterlymost point in Australia, and you know, it's cold now. The temperature just suddenly dropped just in the last few days, and now it's about 11 degrees in the morning, which is a bit cold, and gets maybe 7 degrees at nighttime. But you know, we're not centrally heated, these houses in Australia, so it does feel cold. But nevertheless, the sun comes out at least at some part in the day, so I'll always go outside, and you know, we have a small pool that I can dive into as well, which is not super cold. I mean, I'm reasonably tough, but I always work out first, and I do my stuff first, just to, when I say work out, today it was the ultra gentlest practice I did for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and not to raise any sweat, not to raise any heart rate, just really just meditative movement. But that meditative movement nourishes me for the whole day, because I call it a work in rather than a workout. You see, at workout, you end up with less energy, less vitality, more pain, usually more need for food, more need for sleep. You know, whereas a work in, at the end, you have less pain, more energy, less need for food and sleep. And that's work in is closer to what I think of might be yoga. Most people don't do yoga, they do a workout. It's more exercise.
I was going to say that, because yoga should be at homeostasis, shouldn't it? So
yes, rebalancing the homeostasis.
Rather than you know, I'm not necessarily slagging off certain styles, but some styles encourage a higher heart rate. You know, definitely don't stay in touch with your breath the whole time. And I've you know, been guilty of doing that when I've done those practices and hurted myself and all of those things. So it is really interesting that yoga definitely has become a workout, which, you know, suits some people and gets them in, but
it's just that the aerobics of the 2020s.
Exactly, it sure is.
It's like what it was. I mean, I started aerobics probably in the early 80s. And this seems what most people are doing in modern yoga classes is very little different. Very little different, you know.
Is that how you hurt your knees when you were doing exercising before?
Yes. In my aerobics classes, I managed to give myself shin splints and stuff like that. And I did a whole bunch of, I mean, I started yoga very early, but, you know, in my late teens and my early 20s, I tried a variety of exercises, and almost all of them ended up with me being injured in one way. You know, my first gymnastics class, I broke my neck. My first sword fighting class, I got stabbed in the armpit. And, you know, I did dancing one time. I managed to get someone to trip on me, and they dislocated my knee and tore my ACL.
Oh,
you know, it's
your
like,
lesson is don't do any exercise.
No, exactly.
Don't do any exercise. It's called exercise.
No, but quite seriously, in terms of the sorts of things that I'd like to see people doing for ongoing longevity, health, and happiness, is I'd like people to do posture, movement, and breathing and mental control in a way that, you know, it may be up to, for ideal health, you want posture, movement, breathing, mental control to be done for hopefully 3 to 6 hours a day. But in that 3 to 6 hours a day, where 6 hours, 360 minutes, 400 minutes, maybe for 10 to 30 minutes, if you did, you know, 400 or 300 minutes, then you can go for it. Maybe 1/10 of the time, no more, would you spend your exercise, your posture, movement, and breathing time doing what I'll call exercise, where your heart rate might go up, you might breathe more than normal, and you might feel tension and stretch and this sort of stuff. But if you're only allocating 1 hour a day where you're going to live consciously in your body, which is like 60 minutes, I don't think most people should do more than 4 or 5 minutes where the heart rate goes up.
Right.
Because I think if you do, you will end up causing your body to enter a predominantly oversympathetic nervous system state, where basically you're encouraging the fight or flight response to take a dominance, and that will switch off your immune system, reproductive system, digestive system, and also cause the dominant internal emotions to be fear, anger, aggression, lack of safety. And that doesn't mean that you're doing very good for yourself or your relationships with the people around you, because you lose your sense of trust with the people around you because you're losing it within yourself, you know.
Right.
So yeah, you know, exercise is fine, but keep it to between 1 to 10% of the time that you're doing your allocation of conscious posture, movement, breathing, and mental control.
Awesome. Yeah. But what if, this is my child brain, so like, for instance, dancing, I love dancing, I dance around on my own quite a lot. That definitely gets my temperature and my heart rate and my breathing but I'm doing it with a really conscious mindset and knowing that I'm staying in my body and that it's full of joy. So I guess, I don't know.
I, Um, well, I'm sure you're a dancer. I mean, you look like a dancer and you look like you'd enjoy dancing. I love it. I love
Yeah.
dancing as well. But, when you're in a dance, which is more like a trance dance, where you're going for like, we used to go to the parties in Goa where we would do 16-hour dancing non-stop. We would not leave the dance floor for 16 hours, maybe have 3 1-liter bottles of some sort of liquid drink, which we would just go grab
Theoretically,
every 2 hours. Yeah, yeah. One drink, 1 liter, drink it, and then
I'll have
go
a
back to
pint.
dance for 2 or 3 hours. Yeah.
Do you want a pint, mate? I'll have a pint. Yeah, great, right.
but
Wow,
but
16
but
hours.
yes, yes, yes. It was like running 3 marathons in one go. But we built up to that, and that took a bit of fitness to get there. But most of the time, you are not having your heart rate super elevated.
Yes.
You're not breathing a lot. You're just moving in a way where suddenly you go, gee, this feels amazing. I'm moving so fast, but I'm not really breathing a lot. My heart's not really racing a lot. And I think when we dance, we tap into a real yoga where energy starts to move inside you, and you actually generate energy by the type of movements you do.
Yeah.
Not everyone does it. I mean, it took me a long time to learn it. For example, when you're moving, if you're going back and forth and your knees or your legs are going boom, 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 that takes energy. It will make your heart beat. But if your movements, instead of being linear back and forth, combine up and down with back and forth, and you end up going in circles, circular movement or spiral movement or figure 8 movement, that builds energy.
Yeah.
And when you put that into your dance, it changes the practice. Then you find you get really warm without your heart racing. You get really mobile and loose without feeling stretchy, and you feel stronger while not feeling tense. And you can also get more energy without having to breathe so much, because the happiness is a big one as well. Having passion in your practice, having a sense of love, brings you into instant consciousness. And one of the things that one of my mentors is Bruce Lipton, and I really admire his work, and he's a molecular geneticist like I was for many years as well. And his research came to that most people spend 95% of their day living unconsciously, and only for 5 minutes a day do they live consciously. But he said that when people choose to be at a time where they can start to access their unconscious mind and get real benefits of health is when it's predominantly when they're in a state of love. And when you're in love, you're more conscious. It's like when you got a brand new boyfriend or girlfriend, and you suddenly take care about how your house looks and how you have I dressed okay. When you're in love, you start to be conscious. But you don't need a partner to be conscious. You just have to be you don't have to need a partner to be in love, rather. You just have to be passionate about something you're doing. And it's easier to be passionate about things you love, like having a good dance, if you like that, or find any activity that you really love doing and just get into it.
Yeah.
But ideally, it's an activity where you're using your whole body, where you're moving through a full range of motion. That's why dancing is one of the best.
Yeah.
Rock climbing is also good. Walking's okay, but a lot of people just walk with their hips and their
Really good.
shoulders
Yeah. Again.
and
Yeah.
spine never moves. But if you can really walk like an Olympic walker, then you're moving everything. It's fantastic.
Oh, great.
So that's important.
Yeah, excellent. Good. I'm glad that we can agree on the dancing thing, because I don't ever feel
Yes.
depleted
Yes.
after dancing. If I go for a run, I feel
No.
depleted. If I dance, I feel like I'm on ecstasy without having actually done
Yes.
ecstasy for a while.
Yes. And if you're dancing, I'm sure, is like a meditation.
Yeah, totally.
And you're doing it sustainably. Something you can do which is sustainable, which is engaging, calming, effortless, and invigorating at the same time, satisfies all the criterion of meditation. So dance the way you're doing it, not the way that everyone does it, but the people who dance, they go for 3 or 5 hours of dancing, which I'm sure you can do. You're doing something which is sustainable, which is engaging. You're really having a good time. You're living in the present moment, connected to everyone around you. That's engagement. And it's
Great
relaxing
news.
still.
You're delivering great
Yes.
news, Simon. I'm really enjoying this.
And it's effortless, and it's also invigorating because it makes blood flow. This is what most people's posture, movement, and breathing should bring them towards. And in my classes, I actually let them have a free-form section. I don't call it dance because that freaks people out.
It does,
But I
doesn't
give
it?
them a chance to move freely. Because not everyone likes to dance.
Yeah.
But when you say to people, just now, use the movements I've given you before, this movement, that movement, and just add them wherever you like, in whatever position you're in. and they'd put some nice, vibey music on, and people just go for it. And then someone says to me, gee, you know what? It felt like I was at a dance party. I go, oh, really? It's just movement. But they said, but I've never danced before.
Really? Well,
And
bless
so,
them.
yes, yeah, because sometimes if you tell people we're going to have a dance in the middle, they freak out. But if you say, look, we're just having a free form section where you can just use the movements I've given you freely, but move smoothly, move in circles, don't move zigzag, they have a good time.
Yeah, it's true. I have the
Mm,
same
mm,
thing
mm.
with On Base. So On Base isn't just a festival, it's a class. It's a yoga rave. So I get people
Good.
there who are, really into yoga and purists, which is cool. And then people who just go there for a dance. So some people in between are like, I don't want to dance. So I call it moving meditation.
Yes,
It's
yes,
all
much
ways
better,
of
much
saying
better.
things. And
Yes,
I turn the lights
should
off.
be, yeah.
So it's
Yes,
all by candlelight. We have these little tiny candles. So it's really nice. And then by the end of it, they're
nice.
all absolutely having it. They're all like,
Yes,
woo! But yeah, it's nice to see them. You just got to let them know that
yes,
no one's watching them and they
yes,
can't do
yes,
anything in particular. So
yeah.
yeah, it's
I
nice.
learned so much from the thousands of hours I danced in India.
Mm,
Really, Bianca Matchless is my business partner, and I, went to Goa I went from the mid 80s, we went to the late 90s together, and probably 1,000 hours or more dancing at those parties on the beach with hundreds of people, thousands at the beginning of the night, but there was always a hardcore batch of 200 or 300 who'd be there right up until sunset the next day, still going.
yeah,
And it
mate.
was a magic thing because you really are, in an ocean of loving people who are just sending out good vibes and good energy, and it's done without talking. So, but people are communicating with their smiles and their expression, which is one of the saddest things about right now, that we've got this lockdown situation where they're trying to definitely keep us from exercising. And when we're outside, we have to be distanced. You can't come
Yeah,
close to people. You can't shake hands, can't hug. And they're putting a mask on your face so you can't see people's smile or
yeah,
expression. This to me is really wrong. And I think if they are sincerely trying to protect us from some virus, if there is such a thing, and we can talk about that later,
yeah,
then they're actually doing more danger to more people psychologically, not to mention financially, sociologically, everything else, because people will commit suicide.
mhm,
Many people are on the verge of real mental breakdowns because they're fully lonely. They're not connecting with each other. And this disconnection that they're creating with people is really unhealthy, much more unhealthy than any virus would ever do. This is not a deadly virus. Even the World Health Organization has admitted they overestimated the danger by 1,000-fold. They thought millions would die, and they're not even getting as many as the average flu deaths.
right, okay.
And when they're counting the average flu deaths, what they're noticing that the cancer deaths this year are much less than they were last year. Why? Because everyone who's labeled as dying from COVID-19 was also having secondary complications like cancer, like
Yeah,
other sorts of injuries as well. So is it a dangerous flu? No. Are they making more problem? Yes.
mm,
And one of the biggest problems is the isolation that people are living in, mental, physical, social isolation, which is made worse by the fact we can't even see each other if you're wearing a mask.
yeah. I feel
I
really
think it's
for
really
the old
wrong.
people because old people in these care homes, like they're the most vulnerable, and they can't see any of their family, and they
Yes, which
can't
is
see the
criminal.
expressions of their carers. It's
Yeah,
they're part of me thinks, are they dying from COVID or from a broken heart? It's like it's horrible.
I think many are dying from a broken heart.
Yeah,
Many are dying from a broken heart. It's really, really sad. Really,
really.
really sad. It's a really wrong thing that's happening right now. I'm not happy about it at all.
No.
And, it's quite controversial to say so. If I say it on many mediums, I'll talk to you and anyone who's listening and I'll debate it. I'll debate it but it does cause problems. And I won't put this on my Facebook page, but, maybe someone here might think about it. But there's a lot of good science that says that this is not right.
Yeah.
I was a molecular geneticist. I used to work in molecular biology labs, for example, when the PCR test came out. And when the PCR test came out, which is what they're testing for COVID-19 for at the moment, they said, you cannot use this for diagnostic purposes. So why are they using it now? Have they actually purified a virus? They're not telling us. They just take a swab of DNA and they test everyone. But what they're getting from the swab of DNA that they're testing from, they're also getting bacterial DNA, they're also getting human DNA, and they're mixing that into the batch. They're saying, let's test to see if anyone else has this DNA. And of course, everyone has it. because everyone has cells in their body. I think it's really wrong what they're doing, and I think that we're going to get some really bad repercussions from it. But I think to know that is not to scare people, just to realize that, for one thing, I know many of my English friends are freaking out in their house because they think if they're going to go outside, they're going to get sick, and they're too scared to even go outside. So first of all, get rid of the fear. It's not as bad as people think. There is a virus out there which may be exactly like some flus. It may be a little bit different. I've had people who've had it. I've got friends who've had it in Italy, for example, in Bergamo, which is the most, one of the worst places in the world supposedly, and it's a bad flu, and they get over it. Now, of course, if you're old or compromised or sick, then yes, you're more at risk. But that was always the case with the flu anyway. So my message is, stop being fearful, because fear will turn off your immune system. Fear is the biggest friend of cancer. And so stop being fearful, and also stop doing exercise that actually adds to that flight or fight response by overstretching, overtensing, overbreathing, overthinking, just to get a quick adrenaline buzz and think you're doing some exercise.
Yeah, because actually that's something I didn't realize until when I was in Thailand. So I trained for fights, and I trained like 8 hours a day, and I didn't realize that absolutely smashes your immune system. So I was getting
trained
sick
for fights. Wow.
Yeah, and I got sick just before my actual fights, and I was like, what is this? And one of the girls that I was in the fighters dorm, so we were in a dormitory of all the girls that were fighting, and she was like, oh yeah, well, training, when we train this hard, you basically lower your immune system. And I was like, but that's mental. Why are we doing it before we have to go and put ourselves in a ring where someone's going to be battering my head in? So
Yes, exactly.
I didn't realize that it actually does lower your immune system. But
it's very, very sad.
They're just doing anything that they can. So, I've also suffered with depression quite significantly. And so it's like it's a balancing act, because, when I went to Thailand, I was very, very unwell mentally, and it helped me get through that, the physical activity.
Yep.
But then, of course, I was getting sick with colds and just little things, but it's that balance of people in lockdown. It's like, well, which is what's the thing you're trying to look after the most, I guess? It's like if
physical, physiological, or mental. You've got 3 parts to your body at least. Physical body has to be looked after, so does physiological, and so does mental. So the physical stuff is, are you looking after your muscles and bones and your joints? So you've got to move your muscles and joints and bones, move them actively. Are you looking after your physiology? Is your blood flowing? Is your nervous system, immune system, digestive system functioning? For that, you have to also move and do things which does not turn off your immune system. Stop doing the fearful things, stop entering flight or fight. But then mentally also, you've got to have engagement. And someone who's depressed, is often dwelling too much in the past. Someone who's anxious often dwells too much in the future. And actually what we want is to be here now, which is the essence of yoga, which is meditation. And that means to be in a meditative state, you've got to find engagement. Now, engagement you can get into a person by giving them pleasure or pain. And so you got the engagement through pain. Sometimes pleasure's too subtle for a depressed person. It's too wishy-washy. Sometimes pain, brings you right back in the present moment. So you possibly got out of your depression by coming into a painful arena. And that, many people get that. 100%. Suddenly it's real and here and now when you're being punched in the face, but it's not very functional. It's a little bit dysfunctional for some people.
But it worked. I did end up jumping off a bridge. So, swings and roundabouts, Simon.
Swings and roundabouts. I noticed that in the Almond Base conference, one of the popular things was the breathing exercises. Very popular, right? And this is very popular in the world today to get people to hyperventilate. Because when you hyperventilate, what you start doing is you start reducing blood flow to the brain and increasing the production of adrenaline, cortisol, and endorphins. And so with adrenaline, it's a little bit like, I think I said this to you before, maybe adrenaline, it's a little bit like adrenaline, cortisol, a bit like coffee and cocaine, reducing blood flow to the brain by hyperventilating. Because you hyperventilate, you blow off your carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a necessary prerequisite to allow the blood vessels to the brain to open. So by breathing more than normal, you get dizzy, and that dizziness reflects a lack of blood to the brain, which gives you almost like a marijuana effect. And then on top of that, because the body perceives hyperventilation to be a symptom of flight or fight response. So then you enter a flight or fight response, and the body thinks it's about to get hit or attacked, like in a fight. And when you've been fighting, sometimes you hit very hard, but you don't feel it. You feel it the next day. Because
Exactly.
in a fight or flight response, you've got endorphins, endogenous morphine, like heroin, running through your body. You feel no pain. And this feeling is for many people amazing. They do these hyperventilation exercises and they feel amazing. I feel amazing. I'm on a pranic high. I'm on this type of high. You go, no, you're just stoned on the body's own marijuana, cocaine, caffeine, and heroin at the same time. And
Sounds excellent,
admittedly,
though,
these are,
Simon, to be honest.
yes, it does. It sounds excellent. That's why people love it. And it's very popular. But would you want to do that every day? I mean,
No.
drugs, I mean, really, drugs are useful. There are times when you want to take drugs, and there's times even recreationally people take drugs. But you don't tell people take heroin, marijuana,
Yeah, sure.
cocaine, caffeine, and go drive a car.
Yeah.
You don't tell them to do this and then, do an operation or something like that. There's a time and place. If you want to take any drug, and some recreational drugs are very useful. For example, they've done really good studies in Johns Hopkins University on psilocybin, DMT,
Yeah.
LSD. Even, some of my friends in London University were experimented on with DMT experiments injected into their bloodstream and published recently, DMT into the bloodstream. And then they do brain scan analysis. But all of it showing some really profound results to help people with depression, post-traumatic stress syndrome. Drugs can be very useful, and everyone in our society has some element of depression,
Yeah.
anxiety, stress, trauma.
Yeah.
And so are drugs useful? Look, I mean, most food are drugs as well, aren't they?
Sugar is
Most foods are
bloody
drugs.
hell.
Sugar's a drug? Yeah.
I actually,
Bread
oh,
and,
yeah, I had some
tell
sweets
me, go what you say.
sailed off my face. I had half a
Yes,
pack of
completely.
sweets, and I was honestly, I was rushing. It was like I was on speed, which was
Yeah.
a long time ago that I did speed last. But yeah, oh my word, honestly, I was like, I had to do a what I
It
had to
shouldn't be
do a
legal.
workout.
Yes,
Get
it
rid of
shouldn't
it.
be legal.
Yeah.
You know, the what was I going to say? The bread and most grains and milk has substances in it which bind and stimulate the receptors for the opiate receptors in the brain. So
Right.
there's elements of bread and milk that stimulate the opiate receptors in the brain. So essentially, you can become addicted to dairy products and bread,
Yeah,
and people
100%.
feel it. They get
Yeah.
very addicted. Cheese and bread. I've got to have cheese
I
and
think
bread.
it's
Without
in
it,
the
I'll
West
die.
how it's been made in the West, because actually, in Ayurveda, the ghee and the milk is not homogenized. It's a different type of milk altogether, and it's got
Yes,
various
yes.
benefits. But yeah, the stuff that's in the West is it's just pure poison. It really is. For sure, I agree totally. I was actually going to ask you what you think about diets and things, because there's obviously, like, I get told a lot by other yoga teachers, and I find it really hard to talk about these things because you feel really judged, right? Like, about what you eat,
Yes, always.
what
Yes.
you blah, 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 think and feel, and like, so I've gone through a love-hate relationship with all diets, like with veganism, with omnivore, with vegetarianism, and I've had to kind of come back to quite a traditional Ayurvedic diet. So I do still have dairy. I have eggs from my chickens in my garden. I have good dairy because I know about what's what. But yeah, where do you stand on it all?
I have been pretty much living off fruit, salad, and vegetables pretty much exclusively for the last 35, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so my main routine is I'll have probably nothing to eat or drink in the morning.
Yeah.
And then maybe my first drink might be sometime mid-afternoon, late afternoon, depending on when I'm teaching. And then maybe I have a piece of fruit, maybe a quarter of a watermelon or something like that. And then maybe an hour or so later, I'll have a big salad of lettuce, tomato, maybe a piece of avocado and stuff like this. And then an hour or so after that, I'll have some steamed vegetables.
Great.
And that's my food for the day, but it's all localized to a period of about 3 or 4 hours in the day. And most of the day I'm not eating or drinking. And that suits me fine.
Yeah.
I've had periods of raw food, for many years as well, and live food and stuff like that. But I find the less I eat, the better I feel. The
Mm.
less I need for sleep, the less I need to sleep, and the more energy I have. And even like, when I've been doing these seminars like you now, like the one where we actually did live I don't eat before those things.
Mm.
Today was the first time I've actually eaten before a talk like this, because it came unexpectedly, and I promised to cook my family some food. So I've
Oh,
eaten a
nice.
little bit of food tonight.
In between that and the
Most
cleaning
of
and
it's
the
sort of,
schoolwork, yeah?
yeah, particularly, yeah, I'm back in high school. I can't believe I'm back in high school.
How many
This is the
kids
other
have you
thing. I
got?
mean, I've got two. One is 16 and one 13. So I'm doing PE and English assignments with my 13-year-old boy, and I'm doing photography and agriculture assignments with my daughter at the moment, with more coming up soon. I've been studying goats for the last few days.
Goat
It's all
yoga,
about
Simon.
goats.
Goat yoga.
Goat yoga. It's true. It's true.
Wow.
Goatland.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
there's some pretty intense ages to be at home and
they
learning.
are. The good thing about, a lucky thing for us, is that for many years we did homeschool our kids. So it's just like back to normal again in a way. But, the kids were really enjoying being at school the last couple of years, because before that, 4 years they weren't. They're both at high school now. But, my son actually elected to go back to school 3 days ago, because they will permit kids at our school in the local area. But generally, most of them don't come. So my son said that out of 150 kids in his year, there's only 4 people who have come at the moment to school. And he's only gone for the social interaction, because I said he can't be on PlayStation.
Good.
Otherwise, he'd be on PlayStation.
Yeah, PlayStation. Oh man, I never got into any of that, but I think, yeah,
No, neither do I.
bless him.
Yeah.
Oh dear. I was also going to ask you about, this is another topic that maybe lots of yoga teachers are ambassadors for yoga mats, right, and stuff like that. But I find, so again, along the same lines as computers, technology, plastic yoga mats. Call me old-fashioned, Simon, but about 2,000 years ago, I don't see people using plastic yoga mats on the top of the Himalayas.
No. No. One of my favorite practices, we were talking about grounding before.
Yeah.
I actually really love just lying on the bare floor.
Mm,
And if I go to the beach, I'll definitely lie in the sand. I won't use a mat.
great.
I like being on the sand, which is hard near the water, which means the water comes on me as well.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I sometimes work on the grass. I'll stand on the grass. I'm a bit allergic to grass. So I don't lie on it. But what I've got is a really nice section of concrete, which I lay down myself. So some people think concrete's bad, but to me, this is my concrete. I laid it down, so I lie on it. I
Great.
laid it, so I lie on it.
Yeah.
And as I lie on it, I rub my whole back into it, rub my feet
Nice.
into it. I have nice wood that I lie on and roll on. I do a headstand on it. It feels good to me. I
Yeah.
like being on these hard surfaces. I don't need a soft, spongy mat.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. I feel like I'm more wobbly on a mat. I feel like I'm
Yeah,
not
wobbly.
connected to the ground
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
I've never used a mat. What I do use under my knees, because I have smashed my knees up a fair bit from martial arts, what I use under there is, like a bath mat that you come out of the bath and it's like a cotton mat that you put outside the shower or
Yes.
whatever. I put that under my
Yes.
knees
Yes.
if I absolutely need something.
Yes. Yes.
So I always joke that I'm very pretentious with the level of mats that I use, because you can pay like hundreds of dollars, right, for these mats. I mean, what? And then, I just come out with a nice little cotton mat for underneath my knees and use something called
Yes.
the floor.
The floor. Yes. What God gave us before He
Sorry,
invented mats.
really
Yes.
pushing it
I
out
mean,
there.
this is my yoga mat. It's just like a sarong.
It
So
makes it
that
more
has,
functional.
yeah, it's functional, and it doubles as a handkerchief and a cloth, and I tie it around my genitals sometimes as well.
Wonderful. Why wouldn't you? And then you can wipe your anal sphincter with it if you use a bum gun in Asia.
Exactly, it's good.
Perfect.
Anal floss. Exactly. Yeah.
Anyone who says
You
the two,
can't
hmm?
go on. Tell you say.
It just took me back to the last time we had a talk and you said two things in the same sort of space. One was anal sphincter, which is one of my favorite things to say ever, and the other thing was shit curry. Remember you said about the
Shit curry. Yes. The shit curry in India, when you have that, it burns twice usually.
yeah.
Once in the way in and once in the way out. Yeah, yeah.
Was it a breath that you were
Mm.
trying to describe?
Shit curry. Shit curry is this breath where you breathe like this.
That's it. Yeah. I
The
was trying
shit
to
curry.
go
Yes.
back from the immature to the real thing.
Yeah, yeah, the real.
The real.
Shitali is the roll tongue,
That's it.
and some people that genetically disenfranchised can't roll their tongue,
I
so they
can't.
have to do shit curry instead. You
I have
can't?
to do shit curry. Yeah, I can't.
Oh, you have to do shit curry. Not everyone can do it.
I can't do it. Which is
So
really
tough.
weird because I was a full-blown lesbian for 10 years and you would have thought I'd had dexterity there. Do you know what I mean?
Right, I see your point. Well, it's good. It's good
I
fun,
need
definitely.
to grow up. Excellent. Oh, good. Head wobble. Oh, dear. I was going to ask you a couple of other things. So, is there anything else that you want to talk about?
Well, if I mean, you can ask me more, but I was just going to continue a little bit about the whole dietary thing because
Yeah, great.
I'm as much as I generally will tell people when you're practicing posture, movement, breathing, mental control under the name of whatever you want to call it. You can call it any new age fangled name. You can call it yoga. You can call it exercise or whatever. I think the best breathing that you can do is natural breathing. Natural breathing meaning inhale low into your pelvic floor, lower abdomen, lower back. Exhale passively, no extra muscles used. Don't think too much about it. There's not much of it. And you can breathe through your nose. You can forget about doing it, but there's not much of it. Natural breathing, the same breath you do when you're asleep. It's regenerating, revitalizing. But in my own practice, I do a specific breath control, which is very advanced, too difficult to give most people, like inhalation 1 minute, exhalation 1 minute, and I'll do that for half an hour or an hour. Or, blow out all the air, hold the breath out, and then control my internal organs to do various types of Kriya practices, which are too difficult for most people. But one of the things you can do to enhance your ability to say, hold the breath for extended periods of time, because, like, for example, I can hold my breath for about 6 minutes, but it helps if before holding your breath, you do hyperventilate. So
Yeah.
hyperventilation, meaning breathing more than normal. So it's not that I'm saying hyperventilation is wrong. It's just that after you hyperventilate, which causes a depletion of carbon dioxide inside the body, you must then hypoventilate. So in other words, if you've breathed more than normal for a period of time, you must compensate and balance that physiologically, mentally, and physically by breathing less than normal. And that means for me, if I do 3 or 4 minutes of breathe, that's not wrong if afterwards I hold my breath for 5 or 6 minutes. And most people can't do that. They don't do that. They don't even see the benefit of doing it. But once you do both together, you get a turning on and off of your immune system in the same way that Wim Hof does. But
I
many
was
people
going to say,
talk about Wim
yeah,
Hof, but most people don't do what he does. They just do the hyperventilation, and they don't hold their breath for long periods of time like he does.
right.
And then there's the problem also with a lot of these hyperventilation modern classes, which are very popular. They just get you to hyperventilate. They don't get you to hold the breath afterwards. Because many people also can't hold the breath afterwards because their diet is too acidic. And you see,
Right.
holding the breath creates acidity through the buildup of carbon dioxide, whereas breathing more than normal causes alkalinity. But people don't want to be either acid or alkaline. The body will only function ideally when it's at a pretty neutral pH. In fact, the pH has to be for the blood between pH 7.35, 7.45. Any more or less causes problems. But if you're going to do a practice like real pranayama, where you breathe less than normal, which will make you quite acid because it builds up CO2, it's much better if your diet is very alkalizing. So my diet is predominantly an alkaline diet where I live off fruit, salad, and vegetables. I hardly would ever eat any grains or nuts or never eat meat for 40 years.
Right.
And so my diet's very, very alkalizing. But most people can't live off just fruit or just fruit and salad because they feel no energy.
Yeah.
Because if you're just being alkaline, you actually constrict blood vessels to the brain, you reduce entry of oxygen to the cells in exactly the same way that hyperventilation does.
Right.
So what you need is a balance of two practices. You need one practice which makes you alkaline and one practice which makes you acidic. And for me, that practice is I eat just alkaline foods and I breathe in an acidic way, and that creates neutrality. Whereas many people do the exact opposite. They eat predominantly acidic foods, which cause all sorts of problems,
Yeah.
and they breathe in a very alkaline way, which also causes all sorts of other problems. And then they sort of meet in the middle, but the meeting in the middle results in the production of lots of acidic residues in the body, which have to be neutralized by leaching toxic acidic, by neutralized by leaching calcium from your bones and
Oh,
teeth,
yeah.
which makes these very insoluble calcium complex insoluble salts in the body, which lodge between your joints, making your joints have arthritis and things like this. It lodges in your blood vessel walls, giving you all sorts of cardiovascular problems, lodges in your kidneys and your liver and your gallbladder. And so we end up starting off as very flexible, strong-boned, loose-jointed people and end up being very weak-boned, stiff-jointed people because of the predominant over-acidic diet in people's life and this propensity for hyperventilation, which is made worse in classes which actually tell you you should breathe more.
Right.
Breathing more is what sick people do in hospitals.
Yeah.
And it's not wrong to do it for a bit, but afterwards you have to compensate. That's my rave about that.
Great. Okay. Do you talk about diet? How do you feel about the blood type thing?
Well, I mean, maybe I could tell you that my blood type is a type O.
Right. And yet you live on a vegan diet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. If the blood type has basis in it, and maybe it does, part of the idea of the blood type diet was that supposedly grains have only been around for a short period of time, maybe 10, 20,000 years. And before that, we weren't really living off grains. So they say the O-type diet's the oldest type diet. Therefore, if we didn't, and they hadn't been exposed to grains, therefore grains are not good for the O-type diet. But then the assumption is, well, if you can't eat grains, what's there left to eat? You must eat meat. Well, what about fruit, salad, and vegetables?
Yeah, that's a bit.
Are they stupid?
Bit silly. There's a lot of other food about people. What do you think the meat eats? The are the meat eat all the things that,
Yes, and like people talk about the Paleolithic diet, and I eat pretty much a Paleolithic diet because I don't have grains, but it doesn't mean I have to eat meat. Most people associate the Paleolithic diet with eating lots of meat. Have you read all those studies about how dangerous fruit and vegetables are for you?
No, I haven't. I'm not sure if I could possibly do that.
I don't think you could possibly even find many, except the ones that are toxically laden with sprays and herbicides and pesticides. But apart from that, fruit, salad, and vegetables are not bad for you. They're very good for you.
Yeah, of
But
course.
you don't want to live predominantly off an alkaline diet. So you don't want to be just alkaline. So you have to be acidic as well. And the acidity, the safest place to get it is in the form of retaining carbon dioxide inside you by basically breathing naturally while exercising as the simplest way, or by consciously choosing to breathe less.
Right.
But to actually consciously do some exercise and go, I am exercising, I should breathe more. That's an invitation for sickness.
Yeah. It's interesting because I used to scuba dive quite a lot, and I ended up hardly ever breathing.
Right, me too.
Didn't hardly ever breathe. And yeah, you're from a free diving background, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah.
And it was really odd. I used to come back up. People used to want to buddy with me because I would come up with like almost 3/4 of a tank, and they were like, they called me.
And they'd have none.
And they'd have nothing. My dad used to come up on my tank. Yeah.
I had the same thing happen to me, Rachel. People would say, I'd say, why are you coming up? And they go, tank's empty. I would go,
I've got another hour down here, assholes.
Yes.
I've got a lot more nature to be looking at.
Yes. And that's why you're partly so vibrant. You're vibrant, you're enlightened, you're invigorated because blood is circulating within you. Whereas the more you breathe, the more you constrict blood vessels, especially to the brain.
Yeah. I mean,
the less you breathe, the more you become.
That's exactly what you're saying. A panic attack is the most tangible way that I can think of as an example. You're literally forcing air in and out. So, yeah.
The funny thing is, in many exercise classes, Rach, they're telling people to observe their breath, to be conscious of their breath. But actually, it's the worst thing you can do half the time. Because if I ask you or anyone listening to this, just observe your breath, observe your natural breathing now. And as soon as you start observing it, you start to breathe more than normal.
Yeah, you certainly want to get involved in it, don't you?
Yes. And if I ask you to do one more thing, and anyone who's watching, take a little breath in. And that little breath was probably the biggest breath you've done in minutes. So even if you tell someone, take little breath, as soon as you mention breath, they start thinking about something, they start doing more breath than normal. The best way to get the average person to actually get the benefits of breathing in the same form that pranayama was offering is by getting to do activities which are a little bit more work than normal, like, not just sitting on a chair doing nothing. Get them to exercise, get them to move their body. But while they're moving, tell them to relax their abdomen and just breathe naturally.
Yeah.
And just every once in a while, remind them to breathe into their abdomen and make a passive breath out. But the rest of the time, just get them to forget the breath. And by forgetting the breath and enjoying the practice and feeling safe, not like they're going to damage their lower back, they've got to engage their core, give them safe, accessible exercises while they're moving. And if they can learn how to breathe naturally, like we were talking about in dancing,
Yeah.
then they're actually doing more work while breathing as much as they do when they're asleep. And then they start to get the benefits of pranayama
Yeah.
without any fancy breath control exercises required.
Yeah. That's the same as Tai Chi.
Yeah.
I find that
Same as
actually
Tai Chi.
a little bit patronizing, saying that, our body doesn't know how to breathe when our body knows exactly how to breathe.
Exactly.
Our body
Exactly.
knows.
Just relax and do what you do when you're asleep.
Mm.
And actually, in Tai Chi, I understand often you look for the energy that's coming out of the body. You can
So
often feel after a while energy in the
you can
body.
feel, yeah, you can
Like I
feel
can,
it for sure, but it's almost like you're not trying to make that happen. It's just
no,
something that you
it
notice.
happens.
Yeah.
And I found that when I'm looking, if I specifically focus on breath, usually that feeling is less. If you focus just on the energy, then you actually lose sense of your breath to a certain extent.
Hmm.
But of course, you still are breathing. But
Yeah,
if
of
you
course.
focus on something other than breathing, you focus on energy, then the energy gets stronger.
Yeah.
Because what we want is that energy to manifest through us, inside us, and of course, it's going to come outside of us as well.
Yeah, for sure. Oh,
The
sure.
real prana, the real prana.
Exactly. Oh, good.
Mm.
Well, this is bloody brilliant. We're getting through a hell of a lot. This is amazing.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
How
You were
much?
going to ask me a couple more questions, you said.
I think so. Yeah. Let's have a little looky. Oh, I think I forgot to say as well. So we were talking about technology. Tom, who's the technical side of this. You met Tom.
Bless him. Yes. Yeah. Lovely
Yeah.
man.
So he talks about technology as an extension of our spiritual connection and connection throughout humans. And I was just like, what a legend. How nice is that? What a nice way of thinking about it. But I forgot to mention
Yeah.
that before. He said it's not a
It's very
replacement
nice.
of human interaction, but it's just another way that we can interact. And yeah, I just think that's a really nice way
Really,
of looking at it.
it's a very, very nice way of looking at it. And, although there are problems with screens, with technology, with, radio frequencies and things like this, the human race has benefited so much in terms of coming together in yoga by the fact that we can all communicate. Like, for example, if you think about how your very existence leaves a trace in time and space, because it probably does, doesn't it?
Cool.
And so imagine how many times, I mean, I've traveled around the world so many times now. So my trace is going around the world, making all these patterns around the world. And I've got friends who I've met in 10 different countries. And so we've been making these interacting network, lace work around the world by virtue of our ability to travel through space in planes and ships and things like this in a way that was never happening before. And now, even more so with this lockdown, we're having this amazing ability to join with each other with thousands of people at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm going at a conference in a few months, which has got nearly 500,000 people on the conference, all looking at the same time, and some YouTube channels are watching that many people all at once. It's quite remarkable that we're having a way of connecting and giving a message out en masse, which was never allowed before, never possible before.
Yeah.
And that's very special.
It is.
Mm.
So again, swings and roundabouts, isn't it? Because you can say one thing about it, but really it's saving people as well in a lot of ways, isn't it, right now?
Yes, yeah.
Them...
I think it's important that recognizing that we use this medium for good, not bad.
Yeah.
And I'm sad when I see this fear mongering being put out by much of the mainstream press, which is really not intelligent fear mongering. Like I saw one a while ago saying just a headline, because as you turn your mobile phone on, you usually see headlines. And one of them was 20-year-old Spanish soccer coach dies of COVID-19.
Oh my word.
And you go, that's pretty intense. And then most people would just ignore that headline and go on to the next thing. But I actually looked into it. And what it said was, because I thought that's unusual, I didn't think young people were going to get this. But when you looked into it, it said actually they found out when he got there, he had leukemia and pneumonia as well. And probably he died of leukemia and pneumonia, but he just didn't know it until he got to the hospital. So that sort of mainstream press headline is, to me, a very irresponsible headline. And so
Massively.
that's fear-mongering. It's fear-mongering.
Yeah.
So it terrifies people into staying at home, into not hugging their relatives, to
Yeah.
not saying hello to grandmother, and that's irresponsible. I think if we have this possibility of spreading information through the world, spread loving information,
Yeah,
spread
totally.
good energy and loving information through the body, and then we use it for good. But it's sad that the mainstream media will be sending stuff which is not that intelligent, not that good, and a lot of it is outright lies, as we found out in the past, like the whole thing about weapons of mass destruction, which turned whole nations against each other, not just the ones that went to war, but
Yeah.
also societies, who'd look at one race and another and start spitting them in the street and fighting them, all because of some nonsense that went on mainstream media, which was really, the non-mainstream media knew already there was no weapons of mass destruction. Why sell such nonsense? And the same thing is happening now with this lockdown. It really upsets me.
Yeah.
Spread good energy and loving information with the technology we've got, then we can see some value for it. It might be frying some people's brains, but at least we're spreading good energy and loving information if we spread good things.
Exactly.
Avoid the fear. Don't be fearful. Spread love, not fear. Be in trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I sort of touched upon that in one of my silly videos, Simon, where I went through the different toilet roll chakras because of this toilet roll pandemic. And the first chakra
I
was,
love that one.
did you see that one? The base chakra where
Yeah. Yes.
and the media are spreading mass fear and panic far worse than any virus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then you smeared yourself with the base chakra.
Oh, that was a different one. That was
That was a different one.
That was a different one. I'll send you the other one. So I went through the different chakras with a sound bowl. I dressed up like
Yes.
some sort of white guru, and yeah, the spiritual narcissist, that one is actually something else that I wanted to speak to you about. So, of course, I unfortunately upset someone by putting that video out, but that is what happens whenever you do anything a little bit
Yes.
controversial, silly.
Yes, I'm sure some of the stuff I'm saying will be controversial and cause me some backlash at some point.
And it's not
Not everyone
intentionally
agrees with what I'm
upsetting
saying.
people. It's just,
No, no.
we're allowed to talk, quite
Yes.
frankly. But that
But
one
one
where,
would hope so.
well, yeah, where I talk about teachers, and of course I'm taking the mick out of myself and all of us, like we've all gone online, we're all rushing online to sort of try and help people, which we're trying to do quite nicely and kindly, but also I have also seen so much waft being put out there by people who are not qualified, not experienced. And I'm saying this also not as a massive judgment necessarily, but I do find it unsettling that people are putting out quite a lot of stuff that isn't true, same as the media, but from a spiritual sort of
Yes.
fake
Yes.
guru background.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
yoga world is really full of narcissists. It really is.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is.
So,
It really is.
yeah. What have you got
So
to say?
what sort of stuff in particular? Well, what sort of stuff were you hearing that was incorrect?
It's mainly where people are just talking about what advice. There's nothing in particular, but they're just giving out a lot of advice about how to take care of themselves and what to do, and like keep tuning back into this. Say this person is saying it like every day. I'm going live at this time, and I just feel like it's a little bit grandiose that they think that they have the ability to
Yes.
necessarily lead people, and it's like, and they might be like a year qualified, and let's face it, doing a qualification in yoga nowadays isn't,
Yeah.
it's a month in
It,
India.
it,
You can do it in 2 weeks in
it,
Costa
it
Rica.
yes. It does upset me a lot too. When we look at the level of many people who are teaching posture, movement, breathing, and mental control under whatever guise they want to call it yoga, personal training, whatever. Some have had a bit more training than others, but really, it's not really enough for me to feel like I'm confident to recommend someone to go to the average teacher. Like, say, for example, you had a musculoskeletal problem like a knee injury. Would you maybe consider going to a yoga teacher who says they can probably help you, or maybe go to a physiotherapist? Physiotherapist might be better.
Yeah.
If you had like menstrual disorders or maybe digestive dysfunction, you could go to a yoga teacher because they say they can help those things, or would you go to a doctor?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And if you had a psychological problem, would you go see a yoga teacher, because yoga teachers can help mental disorders, or would you go to a trained psychologist?
This is
You know?
exactly my point. This is exactly my point. They're
Exactly.
trying to give you
No.
psychological life advice, diet
Yes,
advice,
exactly.
and I'm like,
Exactly.
dude, you don't
Nutritionist,
know what
exactly.
you're talking about.
Yeah. So you can imagine how, you know, if you saw someone opening a practice on the main street and it said doctor, physiotherapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, nutritionist, and you go, this is going to save me ages. You think you go there, you get everything in
Yeah,
one. And they go, I'm really happy to see you. I've just finished my 1 month training, so I'm really happy to practice those things on you. You know,
exactly.
as a physiotherapist, to me, I am insulted and horrified by the
Yeah,
number of people who want to talk about how they can help people's bodies. I mean, I'm not a super expert on the body, but I have got 3 university degrees and 40 years of teaching people, and so I know something. But I'm not a trained doctor, so I will refer people to a doctor. I'm not a
yeah,
trained psychologist, so I'll refer people. But to have someone who talks with the authority of all those people, having just done, a year's practice and then a month's training, or even 5 years of yoga teaching or 10 years of yoga teaching, it's not enough. I
no,
taught yoga for 10 years. And then I went, you know what? I don't think I understand. I think I'm going to go back to university. And that's when I did my physiotherapy degree, which was 25 years ago. But already before that, I had 2 other degrees in human biology. So I
mm,
knew something, but we're always still learning. And I'm learning every day. Every day I try and study some more. And my mother, bless her, once said to me one time, why are you going to India? And I say, to learn yoga. She said, but this is your 20th trip. Haven't you learned it already? And I go, oh, Mum, you can't learn it that quickly.
well, you can't ever learn all the yoga, mum.
No, it is.
So much of it.
Another time she asked me, and at the time my father, bless him, had had a stroke and he was bedridden for the last 7 years of his life. And so I said, I don't think that I'll ever feel like I've learned enough till I can go to my father and help him get out of bed and be better.
Yeah,
You know, that's
definitely.
when you understand yoga.
Crikey. Yeah, bless him. That's harsh.
Mm. I was actually, that was one of my saddest moments, was because when he had his stroke, I got a telephone call saying, come now, your father really wants to see you. And, my poor dad he had enough confidence in me at that stage to think that I had the possibility to really help him.
Right.
And I got there and I went, Dad, there's nothing I can really do. I tried a few things, but there's not much I could really do, and I felt really hopeless, helpless, and useless. And I just wished at that point, I mean, now it's, some years later, now that perhaps there's more I could have done. And I feel like if it happened in another 20 years' time, maybe there's more I could do still.
Yeah.
But really, I think all of us need to have the humility to realize how little we know and not be too grandiose about how much we know.
Exactly.
I'm prepared to someone says to me something 20 years ago, I'd go, no, that's just wrong. Now I go, look, it's not what I thought, but look, I'm open to the possibility. I believe nothing, but I'm open to everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even with the whole COVID-19 thing, they're telling us there is a situation. Look, I'm open to the idea, but many evidence is around to tell me other things. So I'm not going to blindly believe people, but I'm open to their ideas and other people's ideas. But don't just blindly believe. Don't
Yeah.
just blindly know. It's when you say I believe, basically it means that you don't know, which
Yeah,
is having
that's
faith.
true. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
because otherwise you don't say I believe. It's just I actually know. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. 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 Well, I don't know anything and I don't believe anything. So,
Yes, me too. Me too.
oh,
Yes.
just
So your point is very, very taken. I totally sympathize with what you said and feel the same.
yeah. I think it's just highlighted more now because everyone is online, so you can see it more. I think more than
Yes, yes,
before. It's highlighting a lot of things, that as all of sort of extreme cooking pot situations do. Everything gets brought to the surface, doesn't it? So
it
yeah,
definitely does.
time for me to
Even in
talk about
people's
boxing.
houses.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, people get cooked in the houses together. I feel for the people who can't leave their house, the ones who live in apartment blocks
Yeah,
in cities where they can only go out. And I understand there's places like even in London where my friends in London are telling me that they can only go out once a day. They have to walk to the shops, which means they can only buy enough stuff for a day or two. Then they have to walk back and wait 3 or 4 hours outside a shop,
Yeah.
because they can only allow a certain number of people in at the same time.
The
This is
queues are
horrible. I
ridiculous
mean,
here. Honestly.
ridiculous.
Yeah, it
And
is.
I'm lucky. I've got a car and I can go and whatever I like, but I only go once a week,
Yeah, we do too. I do the shopping for the
Mm,
whole family. And
mm, mm.
I'm lucky like you. I've got a large garden. I'm on the river, so
Yes,
I can get in the
yes.
river. And
It's very sad to see what's happening in London.
yeah, it's awful. It is really
Mm, mm.
awful. And especially if they've got kids, man. Like you're in a flat
Yes,
with kids, and
yes.
then on top of that, if some of them have ADHD or autism or anything
Yeah, yeah.
else, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of suffering going on for sure.
Quarantines should quarantine the sick people, not the healthy. This is beyond a joke. This is what I think is bordering on criminal. Not just, it's highly irresponsible at best, but criminal at worst. It's
Yeah,
not right
yeah.
what's being done around the world.
And
You
it's
know?
it's
Even
not good for their immune system. Staying indoors is
no,
really bad for your immune
no.
system. So it's just like, oh, I'm going to
Yes,
weaken my
exactly.
immune system.
Yeah,
And
you're not allowed to go out in the sun. It's the
no,
best thing for your immune system. Go out in the sun.
vitamin D.
Can't go out in the sun. No.
No,
No.
it's
One thing I laughed the other day was there was a joke about how if you are sunbathing on the beach, the police can come and arrest you. But if you run away from the police, then they can't arrest you because then you're exercising and then you're allowed to do it. So
I've been
now, for the
thinking
first
about
time ever, you're allowed to run away from the police.
it. Amazing. It's odd.
And
It's
they're
so odd.
illegal.
So
Yes.
weird that
What
you
a mad world we live in.
sunbathe when that is literally the
Yes.
thing that you need. And
Yes.
you
Yes.
need to do it every day because your body only retains the vitamin, am I right? The vitamin D from the sun, it only stays
Yes.
in for a
Every
certain
day.
period.
I
So
take off. I expose my bottom to the universe every day.
it's the universe. Yeah, the universe.
Universe. Oh, I like that. I like that.
Get your
When I
universe
was
out.
when I was 20 years old, I was even arrested for doing so. So
Oh,
I'm a very
really?
strong advocate of yes. When I was 20 years old, they take me to court and they said it is alleged that Simon Borg did in a public place to Thompson's Bay behave in such a manner as to cause reasonable persons justifiably in all the circumstances to be seriously alarmed and affronted. And they read
Seriously
this
alarmed and
in the
affronted.
court. Yeah, they read that out in court, and the magistrate got up and said, before me there was a bank robber, and before that there was someone who was very violent. And I come on, they read that charge out, and the judge got up and said, just what exactly did he do? And the prosecutor stood up and said, sunbathing, sir. He was sunbathing. And you go, give me a break. This is good for you. This isn't, you see, worse than the 6 o'clock news. I was acquitted eventually. I defended myself. But
Whoa.
the idea that, that exposing your body to the sunlight is somehow illicit or wrong or now even banned, this is insane.
It is insane. It's
It's
completely
insane.
insane. It's completely insane. I mean, that's what I love it in Spain because everyone's just naked on the beaches. It's just normal.
Makes sense to me.
If you
Makes
go,
sense to me.
yeah, totally. If you go there and you're wearing stuff, they're like, "What's wrong with you?"
What's wrong with you?
Yeah,
Yeah. That's why I like
my kind of
Germany also.
people.
Germany, my kind of people too. And I like it in most of Europe where you go into saunas and you have to be naked. And if someone wears a swimming costume, what are you doing? Get that off. That's revolting. That's disgusting.
Yeah,
Could bring bad chemicals into the area.
and your body, like it's like you're
Yes.
wearing plastic essentially whilst opening your
And you're
pores up.
poisoning our air. Yes.
Yeah, rank, totally rank.
Rank. Mm.
Oh dear. Oh, there was something funny that you said last time as well that I think is really interesting in yoga. That first of all, it appears that everyone's got a six pack, right? I don't know if you've noticed this.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm the proud owner of a no pack because my cake chakra is very active. I
Your
love
cake chakra is very active.
it. Don't want to show
Very,
off,
very good.
but the very active
Yeah.
cake chakra.
Yeah. No,
And yeah,
no, sorry, as you say, any muscle you cannot relax is as useless as a muscle that you cannot tense.
right, okay.
And so someone is walking around and you can see their defined muscles. Either they're just bulking and tensing them just to look strong, or else they cannot relax them, in which case they are dysfunctional muscles.
Right, and just superficial.
Yeah. I mean, you look at some of the Shaolin monks, for example, at a distance, even close up, they don't look bulky. They don't
I
look
was going to
muscular,
use that
but those
exactly.
muscles work.
Yeah,
You worked with Muay Thai boxers and people like that, I imagine.
Yeah, but I also did I've done Kung Fu since I was
Kung
6.
Fu.
So,
Right.
yeah, exactly my point. The Shaolins, they don't have six packs. They
No.
breathe into their belly,
Yeah.
and they're not tense in any way. And the same even with the Muay
No.
Thai fighters, they are so
Yes.
relaxed the whole time.
Yes. You have
Um,
to be. Otherwise, you can't move. You're locked in one position.
exactly, exactly. And
Yes.
you're in fear. And if you're in fear,
Yes.
you're not really observing as much. Like,
Reptilian brain comes on. You can't think properly. Yeah.
yeah, so they're always like,
Yeah.
lilac, lilac. That's how they tell me to relax. Lilac,
Yes.
Lakel, lilac. So, but yeah, because you said about when you did your belly demonstration, you relaxed your tummy and you said, you know, it might look ugly, but that's because, and you know, I'm not saying that your use of the word was wrong or anything, but I find it very interesting that that's what we associate as
Yes.
not
Yes.
normal, whereas it's completely normal for
Yes.
the stomach to stick out.
Yes. Babies do it all the time. Traditional cultures all over the world do it. It's natural. Why would you walk around with an abdomen or an anus that's pulled up tight for absolutely no reason at all other than
Absolutely.
aesthetics?
And it's so
It's
bad
not
for
sensible.
women. We're all told that having a
Yes.
tiny little lady belly, that I like to call it, is
Yes.
not attractive. And I'm like, but where do my organs go? And like, how does like how do I breathe if
Yes.
I'm supposed to be like
Yes.
this, which
It's
is
not good. It's not
completely
good.
the norm in yoga now, completely the norm. So
I'm the guy that runs around saying, relax your abdomen, let it all hang out. And many women are the ones that are the most trouble with it. Men will relax easy, usually.
yeah,
But many
exactly.
women have the most trouble doing it. And when they do it, they're just suddenly like, oh my God, this is so liberating. And I think I mentioned the last talk we had that on 3 separate occasions, I got people to relax the sides of their abdomen in a half sit up. So they breathed in their abdomen and their faces just went, oh. And then afterwards, I said, are you okay? They said, yes. And then after the break, they come back to me and they say, look, I'm going to participate a lot less this afternoon because I've just started menstruating. And I go, oh, that's fine. And I say, hold on, did you just start menstruating when you did that sit up and I got you to relax your abdomen and breathe into it? They go, yes, that's exactly when it happened. And 2 of them actually said, this is really amazing because it's the first period I've had in 3 years,
What?
you know? And so all I got them to do was to do a half sit up and relax the abdomen enough they could breathe in. But you're of course in a half sit up. Like I'm not sure you can see my abdomen here.
Yeah.
So if I lean back as if it's, the front is firm, but the sides are totally soft.
Yeah.
And so that's what will happen to a child who does a half sit up. Their front becomes firm, their sides become soft, which is the most natural thing to do if you're not attempting to tense anything other than just using the sitting up muscles. It's your six-pack muscle, essentially. But for most women and some men, they'll be tightening their oblique muscles, and the oblique muscles act as the antagonists for the diaphragm. So then when most people tighten their abdomen in a sit up, they're doing it in a way which prevents their diaphragm from working, so they breathe in a stressful chest way, which means they haven't got the power of a Muay Thai boxer or a Shaolin monk where they breathe into the abdomen. Then their abdomen becomes weaker and their neck starts to hurt.
Mhm.
Many people doing sit-ups get neck pain and stress.
Yeah,
Whereas
definitely.
what you want in a sit-up is front firm, side soft, breathe naturally and relax.
Hmm.
And when people can do, when I've seen this on 3 occasions, it happened to 3 women, they instantly got their period. You know, one more quick story.
Yeah,
I
go
had a
for it.
woman who came to me for a private consultation. She had a hip problem, and they come for 1 hour consultations with me usually. I schedule people for 1 hour, and I saw her as soon as she said she's got a hip problem, and I say, yeah, your abdomen's too tight. Relax your abdomen. And she goes, really? I said, relax it, let it go. She goes, oh my God, my hip's better. Within 3 minutes, the hip pain was gone.
What?
But so I said, I knew it. She paid for an hour. So I kept treating her for an hour and just showing her more exercise. Then she booked for another treatment a week later. When she came back, I said, how's your hip? She says, it's fine. But guess what? My lower back pain's gone. And I said, you had lower back pain? She said, yes, I didn't tell you because my hip was so bad, I didn't bother mentioning it. I go, okay, good. So I treated her for another hour. She comes back a week later. And I said, so how's your hip? Fine. How's your lower back? Fine. She said, guess what? And I said, what? She said, I'm not constipated anymore. And I said, were you constipated? She says, yes, I had really bad constipation, but I didn't mention it because my lower back and my hip was so bad.
Oh, wow.
This. So then she came back a month later. And I said, so how's your hip? Fine. How's your lower back? Fine. How's your constipation? Oh, it's gone. Fine. She said, guess what? And I said, what? She said, I'm pregnant. And I said, I didn't do that. But she
You're so enlightened, you did it with a thought.
like this. And so I said, did you want to get pregnant? She said, I've been trying to get pregnant. We've been trying to get pregnant for months. And she couldn't.
Oh.
So all it took was just relax your abdomen, breathe into your abdomen, and everything starts to come out.
World domination
It's
by
completely unnatural.
relaxing your abdomen.
Yes, exactly.
Oh dear.
I like that story. It's a good one.
That's a great story. That's amazing. How long ago was that?
Oh, a couple of years ago now. Maybe about 5 years ago now, but I never forget it. She was such a wonderful person to come every week and tell me something new.
Excellent. Amazing. Oh, it's been lovely to talk to you, Simon.
It's a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm looking forward to the next Almond Base, and I'd be really, looking forward to doing that as well. And maybe we can do something slightly different or similar, something the same or whatever.
We'll,
Like that.
Whatever we do, it'll happen and it'll be fun, won't it?
Yes. And thank you very much for your hospitality, your receptivity, and you're such an easy person to talk to. And I actually feel very relaxed when I'm talking to you, and I feel like I can speak more as myself. Whereas in other talks that I've done, often there's a lot of seriousness around it, and I have to sound more like the respectable scientist or the respectable yogi, which I do my best at trying to be a little bit of those things. But I'm also a regular person, and I live by three main philosophies, three main principles as my philosophy. One is enjoy your life, because it's always your choice. Two is look after your body, because it's our temple. It's the only thing we've got. It's the only thing we'll always have. And then use that for the third thing, which is to help other people enjoy their lives.
Perfect.
And when you do that, you can spread good energy and loving information first inside yourself and then spread it with the people around you. Then I think the world could truly be connected in something we might then call real yoga as opposed to exercise.
Exactly.
Stressful exercise.
Stressful exercise, thank you. And hero worshipping yoga teachers who aren't allowed to be real people, which is ridiculous. So I'm so glad that is your feeling, because that's what I'm trying to create with the ZenAF show is,
Yeah, the ZenAF show and the Almond Base dance routine sounds really cool too. And I love what you're doing with your comedy, and it's just really wonderful. When I see one of your posts, I go, yeah.
Excellent. I'm really glad. When we're allowed to meet up, Simon, we can do one together.
I would love that. You'd be very inspiring to work with.
Excellent.
Thank you for your support of me swinging semi-naked through the trees last week. That was
mate. I'm always here for you when that sort of thing's happening. You know what I mean?
Thank you very much.
Ideas. I'm your man. I'm going to send you one of these. It's a T-shirt. I'm going to send you.
Oh, I would love that. I would love it. Thank you very much.
So after this, I'll get your address, because I don't think it's appropriate for you to share your address with the world.
Bless you. Thank you.
All right. I love you. I'm going to stop recording.
I love you too. Thank you very much. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Thank you.